I'm originally from Jamaica. Let me start all over again. Yeah. I'm Mort in Neufville. I'm a graduate of Tuskegee University. I came to Tuskegee in 1968 from Jamaica and did my undergraduate work at Tuskegee. Graduated in 1970, but I left early in February actually, and went to the University of Florida to do my master's and PhD. One thing I can say about Tuskegee is that it prepared me well. The undergraduate work at Tuskegee prepared me well for graduate school. I graduated from the University of Florida with a master's in 71 and a PhD in 74. From there, I went on to Prairie View for my first job as an animal science professor. And there I built the animal science program at Prairie View. Spent 4 years there and then went on to Lincoln University in Missouri. However, while at Prairie View, I was introduced to the Association of Research Directors and the critical role that they played as an organization to link the 18 schools, and I use 18 because at that time there were 18 institutions involved in the 1890 land grant system. At that time, Central State in Ohio was not a part of the 1890 system. After leaving Prairie View, I went on to Lincoln University in Missouri in 1978 as Associate Dean. Spent 5 years there. While at Missouri, I became affiliated with the various associations in the land grant system. And it was quite revealing to me the role that the 1890 played within the total Association of Public and Land Grant Universities. The headquarters for the association was in Washington, D.C. At that time, it was called Nostalgic. The 1890 land grant universities then were rather unique because there was a close affiliation between the research directors, extension administrators, the deans of agriculture, and the presidents of these land grant universities. There was constant communication and frequent communication between the leaders of the land grant system, land grant functional areas, and the respective presidents. And I think that uniqueness somewhat disappeared or not as prominent as it was in the early days. And I think we need to rebuild that. As the years progress, from Lincoln University in Missouri, I moved to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And it was at that time that I began to play a more leadership role in the land grant functions within the 1890 universities, becoming a chair of the 1890 research directors at one time, becoming a leader in the research and extension areas. I built a close relationship with most of the deans and directors because at University of Maryland Eastern Shore I was the dean, and later on I became the provost, vice president for academic affairs. I left Maryland in 97 and went to Washington to work with the National Association of State Universities. At that time, I was in charge of the entire land grant food and agriculture portfolio in Washington, including the 1862 schools. And I played a critical role in the advocacy role for the system. I did a lot of work with the 1890 system and lobbying for the various appropriations as well as legislation. And I'm extremely pleased to see what we accomplished during those years and where we are today. And there's a legacy there because of the close relationship we had with the leaders of agriculture. And I think we were well respected. I remember people like Dr. Hill, Dr. Freddie Richards, Dr. O.C. Simpson, Dr. Melvin Walker, to name a few. there were prominent leaders in the research arena, the extension arena, and in the academic arena. We met regularly as a group and also with the presidents. And we had a close relationship also with the USDA. And that link with the USDA was extended to other agencies or other departments within the federal government. And the USDA leveraged some of those opportunities for us in the other federal departments. As we moved through the process, I'll backtrack a little bit to tell you that, just to show you the progress we have made. Back in 1977, one can reflect backwards from 77 to the Maury Land Grant Act that was passed in 1862, and the fact that we had hoped for inclusion of all institutions and the acceptance, but it was not until 1890 that the legislation was passed to include institutions that could really serve or meet the needs of the Black population. The appropriations that really gave us resources, the Hatch Act, the Smith-Lever Act, we weren't really recipient of those resources until 1972. 1977, when we lobbied hard to ensure that we got some semblance of funding through the federal government that could support our research and extension activities. And over the years, we have built on that 1977 initial funding to where we are today. And I also go back to our participation in international development activities and the fact that our universities played a critical role, from again back to Tuskegee with George Washington Carver and others who really looked at global food security and the need for the African nations to be beneficiaries of the significant development in the United States. And we began international development work on the continent of Africa long before others really engaged in development activities in these countries. And we're helped by the Title 12 legislation, which I do hope that we can re-energize and cement the linkages that we have had with USAID to really ensure that our universities are active players in the global food security development. Because when you look at our campuses today, you'll find that a significant number of our faculty members are international faculty members. A good number of our graduate programs are really enhanced through the participation of international faculty and international students. So we need to make sure that we are an enabling community, we're an enabling environment for really working closely with international partners, with international students, to ensure that they're welcomed and they are part of the society and part of our system. Well, let me go back regarding the 1890 Foundation. Back in 2015, when the 1890 University celebrated their 125th anniversary of the Morrill Act, we looked at what could be done to facilitate or enhance the research and extension portfolio of the 1890 universities. And the idea came up that maybe we should look at some centers of excellence for these universities. And the centers of excellence concept really went back to 1990 at the 100th anniversary celebration. Universities identified areas of interest, and each university had an area of interest, but there was no sustainable funding for whatever they came up with. So in 2015, we decided to take a second look at these. And some areas of interest were identified, and we were asked to really look and see specifically what we should be doing within these areas of interest. USDA made some commitments to really assist us in working on these areas. And colleagues, I was retired then, and Walter Hill and others, and then the leadership within the 1890 system, thought that maybe we should create a foundation. And hence the birth of the concept of an 1890 University's foundation. No structure, no resources. Um, so the first step was to maybe get a 501c3 established for the creation of this foundation, for the function of this foundation. And Walter Hill, Dean Hill at the time, discussed this with APLU, Peter McPherson, and they agreed that there was an existing 501c3 at APLU that was not really functioning. No one was using that 501c3, and that was transferred to the 1890 universities in 2016, and licensure was transferred and became operational. So they went through the process of looking at the structure for a foundation. They needed a president and CEO, and I was approached, and in 2017, February, I started the foundation, the functional operation of the foundation, with myself as a half-time person, along with another colleague, Ken Johnson, as sort of my operating officer, another half-time person. And that was the beginning of this foundation, with some resources, limited resources from the USDA, particularly the Forest Service and APHIS, Foreign Agricultural Service, Rural Development, and others contributed for the initial operations of the foundation. Well, the key issue, although we are not monolithic, we all have 19 institutions at the moment with sometimes differing priorities and sometimes collaborating priorities. Though the major issue is for us to speak with one voice and be consistent, especially when approaching the Congress, private sector, and other agencies. Being a cluster of 19, we can be far more powerful if we speak with one voice. And that's what the foundation does. Promote the concept of being 19 strong. It's so easy for a private sector firm or for a USDA agency to say, well, I can give this $5 million or $10 million to, say, the foundation, to work collaboratively with 19 schools, and as a foundation or as an agency, I'm expecting one product with different inputs, and there I'm getting the collective strength of all 19 through one source rather than 19 different sources. And it prevents an agency from cherry picking or a private sector from cherry picking. Why should I go to Alabama A&M and to compete with FAMU or to compete with Southern when I can go to the foundation to leverage all 19 and get the collective strengths of the 19?
Lastly, any specific recent success stories coming from either a specific university, professor, student, maybe grad student? Any specific thing that sticks out to you?
Well, there are many many success stories that one could really emphasize, but the implementation of these 6 centers of excellence to address the various needs, student success and workforce development. One thing I can point to, for example, is NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, with thousands of jobs available each year, and the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and their workforce being lacking with minority representation. And through working with the foundation, having career conferences, students are able to go to these career conferences, expose the agency to their strengths and weaknesses, and help to build that relationship. And we have successful careers emerging from these conferences. So building those relationships are important. And also the scientific output coming from these centers of excellence, very, very crucial. And the work, for example, of Tuskegee University in working with small farmers, limited resource farmers, and ensuring that whatever research we are doing is being delivered to meet the needs of small and limited resource farmers. I think that's critical. You know, one of my mentors back in the 80s used to say, without these 1890 institutions, where would we be? If we did not have them, we were trying to create them today. So they are a vital resource to the nation.